Welcome in, guys. Welcome to the Marshall Experience, or welcome back. We hope so. If you haven't already and you are brand new, shoot over to the YouTube, which is more preferable for us in the Sports Lounge media, and just hit that subscribe button, guys. Those subscriptions and just the likes on the videos do wonders for content creators, and we would deeply appreciate that on both counts. Speaking of Sports Lounge Media, that is who we are powered by. Thanks to them, absolutely. Over at the Sports Lounge Media, we have Down South Philly, Sports with Sunshine. We have the actual Sports Lounge Media Group. We also have Ken Pat's Talk. And if I've missed anybody, you're going to go on that website at www.sportsloungemedia.com, and you will see who else I'm talking about. So tonight we are covering the AFC West. Okay, we're covering the AFC West, which is the Chiefs, which is the Raiders, which is the Broncos, and the Chargers. We'll start off with the Chiefs here. So again, we're doing a basic fantasy outlook. This is our very last week of doing the outlooks per division. Okay, AFC West is the last one. And again, we're going to start off with the Chiefs. Okay. The 2024 Chiefs wound up finishing 60 minutes short of their third consecutive Super Bowl championship. Blowout to the Eagles aside, they deserve a little credit for winning their ninth consecutive AFC West title. And for sending the Bills home for the fourth time, I should say, in 5 years. Yet the team's 59-point differential, which was 11th in the NFL, reflects the reality that this wasn't exactly the juggernaut offense. Okay, the offense is as of last season, 2024 for the Kansas City Chiefs they were ranked 15th. In points per game, 22.6. And then their defense actually was the highlight of last season. Some people say that Mahomes doesn't really have a greatest defense as everybody thinks. Well, they were ranked number 4 in points per game allowed last year. Okay, so that defense was the highlight and one of the main contributors to them being in the Super Bowl again for the third consecutive time last year. Fast forward to 2025, the Chiefs are mostly leaning on hopeful offensive line upgrades and better injury luck to get back to what they hope is hosting the Lombardi Trophy, right? A goal that, always seems to be within reach when Mahomes is healthy enough to suit up. Okay. As long as Reed and Mahomes and Spags stay together, I think the Kansas City Chiefs remain relevant. Okay. So that brings us to our questions, right? What happened for Patrick Mahomes? What happened to the really fun version of Patrick Mahomes? Okay. For fantasy managers. From 2018 to 2022, the Chiefs averaged at least 28 points per game and never was ranked worse than 6th across the league. Unfortunately, things kind of went south in 2023, where they were ranked 15th, and last year, again, as we talked about, 15th again. This offense has trended forward toward becoming a death by 1,000 per cuts of sort of a unit for years. You know what I mean? It's really fallen off, and they are still winning games. But again, guys, we're here to talk about fantasy wise. Kansas City players have not performed well. Okay, what happened to the big plays? Perhaps it was the OC Matt Nagy in 2023 that caused the problem. Either way, The Chiefs have suddenly become more reliant on down-to-down consistency more than the big playability. Okay, overall, the Chiefs ranked 5th and 6th in rush and pass play success rates as of last season. Okay, Patrick Mahomes also has the lowest average target depth in the NFL during the past 2 years. It's kind of sad. Okay, obviously, this trend hasn't stopped Mahomes from winning a ton of football games, as we just said, but it has resulted in him falling off quite a bit in fantasy land. Okay, he hasn't been bad, but the returns of him where he's drafted haven't exactly been what drafters have signed up for. Okay, after all, we're talking about a guy who was the career quarterback leader in fantasy points per game through his first 6 seasons as a starter. Okay, this guy was a fantasy monster his first 6 seasons. So why 2025 be any different? Okay, well, better pass catcher health should probably be a big thing when considering that Hollywood Brown didn't suit up until week 16 last year, and Rashid Rice was lost for the season in week 4. Okay, throw in the additional prolonged absence of Isaiah Pacheco, and as well as Xavier Worthy seemingly hitting another level in the second half of 2024. And also, this year's supporting cast should be in a better position to create more explosive plays. Okay? So what is Patrick Mahomes' fantasy outlook for us? Mahomes' status is one of the best quarterbacks alive. Hasn't really gone anywhere. Okay, it's not. He is the best quarterback in the league. But the fantasy numbers simply haven't been there in recent years. So it's kind of scary. The aforementioned potential for this wide receiver room to experience better injury luck helps. Although the reality that Travis Kelce isn't playing his best football these days doesn't exactly make the involved pass catchers a particularly big strength, right? Ultimately, Mahomes is the consensus quarterback 6 in my rankings because it's hard to believe someone this good, right, will continue to put forward such average counting numbers. I haven't overly gone out of my way to get him in drafts, despite his price being cheaper than ever at this point. But just realize that better injury health could at least get this group into the league's top 10 scoring offense. Okay, so that brings us to the running backs. Is Isaiah Pacheco a potential diamond in the mid-round running back route race? Okay. You got him, Kareem Hunt. Now they got Elijah Mitchell. Pacheco's explosiveness and his tackle breaking ability simply weren't the same in last season. In large part due to coming back from what I think was a broken fibula. Okay, that said, Pacheco turned just one of his 83 carries into a gain of 15 plus yards. The third lowest rate at 1.2%. Okay, in the league, only to Braylon Allen and Gus Edwards. So yeah, not great. But this is still a running back only one season removed from posting at running back 14 finish in 2023. Teammate Kareem Hunt also didn't get much of anything going on the ground in the way of explosive plays last season. The only meaningful additions to this running back room were Elijah Mitchell and then the 7th rounder Brashard Smith. I don't think Brashard Smith is really going to eat anything. I think Elijah Mitchell is a injury blue chip depth piece, if that makes sense. And then, obviously Kareem Hunt, I think we'll see action. I'm not sure how much. Ultimately, the allure of Pacheco comes down to his potential to handle a near every down role. Okay, in an offense that has a pretty solid history of producing fantasy-friendly talents at the position. Okay, let's go over it for a second. Andy Reid, running back 1, fantasy football history. Okay, so his starter, what his starting running back fantasy ranking is, and this is all the way back to 1999 when he started with the Eagles with Deuce Staley for 4 seasons. Okay, 12, 15, 11, 14. Very mid. Okay, Brian Westbrook, 2003, his rookie year, they were 19. He was 19. So, again, we're losing a little gas. Then we get interesting. From 2004 to 2008, Brian Westbrook was ranked 5, 7, 4, 1, 1. Okay, 2009, Brian Westbrook fell off, was 35. I think he was dealt with some injuries that year, if I remember correctly. Then LaShawn McCoy, Shady McCoy, comes on the scene in 2010. And from there to 2012, it was 3, 3, and 8. Okay, so again, there is some solid history of top 10 finishes for Andy Reid's starting running backs. Okay, now also a reminder that Pacheco racked up 18 and 24 combined carries and targets on 80% snap rates during his first 2 games of last season before he got injured. So he seemed like the guy. Okay, there is some risk, though. Pacheco didn't come close to double-digit touches or a 50% snap rate during their playoff run. Kareem Hunt saw a lot of that, right? As Andy Reid was content with being Hunt, they also had Samaje Perine, who's now back on the Bengals. But Hunt will be 30 in August. There's a lot of history there. Incoming rookie Brashard Smith. I like his pass catching ability, but I don't know if he really cuts into anybody's heavy down roll, right? But the bottom line here is that according to Vegas, the Chiefs are going to be one of the league's highest scoring offenses, and the reality that elite running back fantasy production is very correlated to their team's scoring offensive rank. I think that someone in this backfield is likely priced far too low at the moment, and that has to be, for me, Isaiah Pacheco. Gun to my head, I do believe Pacheco is the Chiefs running back worth targeting. His ADP right now is running back 27. The other running backs in this range are like Tony Pollard, Brian Robinson, and the Steeler running backs, are more certain to be in a more multi-back committee at that same price. Okay, so wide receiver room. Who will emerge as the alpha in this hopefully healthier wide receiver room, right? Let's get started there. Let's meet our 3 contenders. Of course, Rashee Rice, we don't know what's going to happen yet with his situation, so we're going to treat it as, we're looking, he's playing 16 games this year. Okay. All Rice did during the first 3 weeks of last season was score 21.6 points per game. A mark that would only have trailed Ja'Marr Chase over the course of an entire season. Now, are we saying he was going to continue that success? No, he could have done better. He could have done worse. We get that. But what we were given with, the small sample size we were given with, pretty darn good. He's in special company when looking at yards and targets per route run during the first 2 seasons of his career. Okay, the primary concern is the recovery of his ACL, obviously. Or say LCL, torn LCL. We probably shouldn't expect, the typical yards after catch goodness on even if he's ready to go week 1, which sounds increasingly likely after Andy Reid said he expects Rice to be a full participant at the start of training camp. I have not looked into the Chiefs training camp now, but if somebody in the comments knows, or we'll probably touch on it Thursday with a couple camps and some injury reports. Xavier Worthy. Whether it was the inability to stay in bounds, in case of the Butterfingers, or a bad pass from number 15, the Chiefs rookie last year just never really quite managed to get on the same page with Mahomes when it came down to the downfield heaves, right? Until literally their last very try of the season in the Super Bowl. Give Worthy credit for averaging a pretty decent 17 points per game, wide receiver 15 last year, through weeks 11 through the Super Bowl. Okay, although his decrease in targets did noticeably come out, reflects the potential for some of these opportunities to dry up when Rice is healthy and available, right? DeAndre Hopkins late last year, they got him in a trade and took him a second to kind of get in the offense. And then you saw DeAndre getting some targets. Okay, so it worries me that they were just relying on Worthy because they had to, not because they wanted to. Okay, as for Hollywood Brown, Brown worked as the wide receiver 5 during the first 6 weeks of 2022. That was the last time that he was truly healthy. We're talking about 122 catch, 1374, and 9 touchdowns that's what he would have had in 2022. Okay, and the dude looked good doing it. Unfortunately, this is now the 3rd consecutive offseason that I've been really forced to repeat that stat, because that's the last one we can really go off of. The injury gods have continued to be cruel to the artist known as Hollywood, but still a full-time role seems to be possibly on the table. He's only 28. He's a veteran, but if he can get back to a good bill of health, I mean, he's the guy. Been around the league. Elsewhere, you guys have like Juju Smith, Sky Moore, and then the rookie Jalen Royals. I think these guys are all fighting to compete for extra snaps. Royals probably projects as having the most upside of the group. I just realized it's awfully rare for 4th rounders to produce too big of counting numbers at the position for fantasy wise. Okay. So bottom line here is Rice deserves top dog treatment, but his price has churned all the way into like round 2 consideration in some offseason drafts. Okay. Due to the good news surrounding his injury and the potential suspension, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with the suspension, but he's back with the ACL. He was going to be in training camp, healthy back, right? But the injury part of the equation has me refraining from going out of my way to draft him over guys like Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, or even wide receivers such as Ladd McConkey or A.J. Brown. Okay, but the path to high-end success is there. Again, we are basing this off of if he plays 16 games. I'm awfully not exactly lining up to draft Worthy. It is wide receiver 23 ADP. He's a potential alpha target. Hog and DK Metcalf at the same price. I'd rather go DK Metcalf. I also believe cheaper options like Devontae Smith or even Travis Hunter on a different level than a second wide receiver 2 in a well-rounded offense. Okay. The Fantasy Life projections had Worthy, Rice, and Kelsey all finishing within 8 targets of each other. So again, we know how Mahomes likes to spread the ball. He's not going to leave Kelsey out. Rice was his top guy through the first 2 weeks, and he knows he has now the meshing ability with Worthy. Okay, I don't see the former's path to wide receiver 1 numbers by any means. I think that the other 2 are really just available to soak up the bulk of the offense's target opportunities. I think they all hurt each other. Now, finally, Hollywood Brown, probably a solid late-round dart, carrying an affordable wide receiver 61 ADP. Okay, there's a world where he actually messes around and leads the room in targets. I wouldn't necessarily count on that happening, but hey, it's tough to complain about a wide receiver 6 price tag for someone at least projected to work as, possibly one of Mahomes' top 4 targets. Okay. The ultimate question of last year. Is Travis Kelce cooked? Okay. While 2024 certainly wasn't his usual standard of excellence, Kelce among 43 tight ends with 30-plus targets last year. His worst ones were yards after the catch per reception, which was 40th at 3.5. Yards per reception, 37th. Yards per target, 37th. Passer rating when targeted, 37th. And he was worst in the league in the ESPN receiving score. Okay? Looking at Kelsey's yards per route run on a yearly basis really hammers the point home. That's not the typical Kelce that we're no longer looking at one of the game's single best receivers regardless of the position. But here's the thing. Sorry. Kelce was, by all accounts, a shell of himself last year and still finished as the tight end 6 in points per game. Okay, he did this despite scoring a career-low 3 touchdowns. This demonstrates just how fantasy-friendly raw targets and receptions can be in full PPR formats, even if the involved efficiency isn't very good. Okay, bottom line is I've been pretty shocked. I'd be pretty shocked if these 36-year-old next year rebounds to familiar tight end 1 overall heights this season. Okay, his targets per game with a healthy Rashee Rice could be a sign of his involvement when the Chiefs are fully healthy. He only had 4 targets per game when Rashee Rice was in there. Okay, but the latter point is why. That's why I have a tough time overly buying in his current tight end 6 price. Even if some, good old-fashioned positive tight end regression could at least return the guy into the position's top 5. I really do think that if Rashee Rice is playing, it's a different ballgame for Travis Kelce. Ultimately, for me, younger options with similar top 5 upside, Mark Andrews, Evan Ingram, and David Njoku go 10-plus picks past behind Kelce in more drafts than not. So I've mostly only been drafting the longtime Chief, and when tacking on a stacking partner for Mahomes, I love the stack of Mahomes and Kelce. It's the only time I'll ever do it. Okay, so what is our prediction for the Chiefs in 2025? Okay, the Chiefs are once again expected to work among the league's very best teams as they join the Bills, the Eagles, and the Ravens as the only 4 squads with a 11.5 win total. Okay, it'd be easy to simply pound the over considering that they have won 12, 12, 14, 12, 14, 11, and 15 games since the Mahomes era began in 2018. But I'm going to do something stupid instead and bet against maybe the single best quarterback in the league. Give me the under on 11.5 wins for a team that just went 11-0 in one-score contest last season. Okay, even if Kansas City will still still make the playoffs and prove to be a tough out for anyone. But I'd see an under on 11 wins. As for my bold fantasy prediction, okay, Isaiah Pacheco reclaims his full-time starting role and supplies running back 15 overall goodness thanks to renewed explosiveness on the ground and 50-plus receptions through the air. Okay? Next team we're going to talk about is the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay, year 1 of Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles went quite well. Sure. Getting bounced in the wild card round wasn't ideal. But 11 wins for a team that previously hadn't cleared 10 since 2018, that's not too shabby. Los Angeles Chargers in 2024 were 11th in points per game. He had 23.6. And in points per game against, at 17.7, they were the best defense in the league. Of course, now the Bolts are, they're hopeful that 2024 was simply the beginning of something bigger and better things to come, right? This year's squad features a new and improved backfield, as well as some key free agents on both sides of the ball. Put it all together, and PFF has ranked this roster as the 12th best in the league ahead of 2025. So that brings us to our questions. What sort of ceiling can Justin Herbert still reach, right, in fantasy land? Okay, any slander towards, Herbert's ability to remain on the field will not be tolerated on this podcast. He does have a strong arm with plenty of mobility. And I know that sounds weird, but he does. But this combination regularly forces defense to, account for every blade of glass on the football field. Okay? And yet we haven't quite seen the 27-year-old recapture his early career excellence when it comes to racking up fantasy football points in recent years. Okay, these are Herbert's fantasy points per game In 2020, starting in 2020, he was quarterback 7. Okay, and now his sophomore year, quarterback 2. Year 3, quarterback 15. 2023, quarterback 10. And then last year, quarterback 13. Now, the primary culprit has been a drop-off in passing touchdown rate. Okay, Herbert posted quality 5.2 and 5.7% marks in 2020 and 2021 when he was top 7 both times, but has not cleared 4.6% since. You throw in an up and down rushing production due to, well, playing through various painful injuries. But it's been a while since the former 6th overall pick has been a must-start quarterback in fantasy land. I'm going to be honest about it. So, will 2025 be any different? Not so sure. While this was a surprisingly neutral team in terms of drop back rate over expected, the team's willingness to sign Najee Harris and use their first round pick on Amarion Hampton sure seems to point toward more of a run first approach next season. Okay, now after all, their status as the 11th most run heavy offense in terms of total rush attempts was the lowest mark of Greg Roman's career. First year in the Chargers, he came from Baltimore, which also was a run-heavy team. Okay, so what is Justin Herbert's fantasy football outlook? Fantasy Life projection had him at ranked 16th in pass attempts and 15th in carries at the position. I think he needs high-end efficiency and, well, I know that he needs high-end efficiency and touchdown regression in order to return to, well, early career heights. But those bets that the rankers aren't willing, I don't know if I'm willing to make. Now, that said, top 15 standing feels like the floor here. I'm the highest of any ranker actually on Herbert that I've seen, and that's quarterback 13. But I do prefer him over less proven guys like Drake May or Trevor Lawrence going in the similar range of early drafts. But here's to really hoping the injury gods spare Herbert from his usual nicks and bruises. His career high was 306 rushing yards last season. Came despite dealing with I can never say it, plantar fasciitis is in the preseason of last season, and then an early season high ankle sprain. Okay. Now the running backs. Is Amarion Hampton poised to see day one workhorse role? The Chargers used the 22nd overall pick to select, the North Carolina product, and for good reason. Hampton managed to rack up north of 1,500 rushing yards while scoring 15-plus touchdowns on the ground in each of the past 2 seasons. Okay, over the past 10 years, the only other college players to accomplish this feat on more than one occasion: Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, Dalvin Cook, Donnell Pumphrey, and, well, Lamar Jackson. Isn't that crazy? Accordingly, Hampton, now grades out as the second best running back in his rookie class behind Genty. Okay, but around guys like Breece Hall and Jonathan Taylor in terms of their prospect profile, not necessarily play style, but, I also have Hampton as, again, the running back 2 of this class behind Genty. But he, I don't know. The comparison was Deuce McAllister. I don't know how I feel about that either. But of course, it's not a given that Hampton immediately garners a true every down workhorse role due to the presence of Najee Harris, right? Who signed a 1-year, $5 million contract back in March. Okay, I know what you're thinking. Najee Harris, really, Chris? You know what I mean? I get it. But hear me out. Let's play a game. Okay, let's play a game. And if you need to write this down, you can. We're gonna leave names off the board, and we're gonna name stats for 2 players, and then we're gonna reveal what players is, and you can kind of compare what your thought process was before and what it was after. Okay, player A, 3.9 yards per carry, 2.9 yards after contact per carry, 20%. 20.7% missed tackles forced per rush, and a 5.8% explosive run rate. Okay. Player B, 3.9 yards per carry, the same as player A, but only 2.7 yards per contact per rush, 15.1 missed tackles forced per rush, so about 5% less, and only 5% explosive run rate. So almost lower on everything except for the per carry. Okay? Well, player A is Najee Harris from 2021 to 2024 with the Steelers. Player B is David Montgomery from 2019 to 2022 with the Bears. And now note that the Bears' offensive line actually vastly outproduced the former when looking at the ranking yards before contact per carry. They were ranked 15th to Pittsburgh's 29th. But now, it hasn't been all ideal. Okay, Harris did put forward a not so great, really bad combination of explosive play and success rate last season. He doesn't have the sort of proactive one-hitter quitter home run speed that, gets the people going. Jaylen Warren regularly looked like the better back over the years. And yet, as a wise man once said, the best ability is availability. And Harris has never missed a game while continuously proving to be a handful in one-on-one situations. Large volume be damned. Okay, you'll be surprised at how solid his 2024 highlights really were. Nobody's expecting for Harris to lead this backfield. But I do think enough of the ex-Steeler to have the touches split at 236 compared to Harris's 157. So I think Hampton has 236. Now, reminder that Greg Roman watched rookie year J.K. Dobbins average 6 yards per carry and still wound up giving Gus Edwards more total rush attempts in that season while also keeping old man Mark Ingram at 72 carries, plenty involved in as well. Okay, that was then, this is now. There's also, a draft capital difference between Dobbins and Hamptons. I get that. But I do struggle to see a workhorse, 80% or higher snap percentage emerging in an offense that wasn't overly willing to just leave one running back on the field last season. Okay, the bottom line here is I'm very okay with spending a top 5 pick on Hampton in Dynasty land in rookie drafts. But I haven't been a consistent buyer at his offseason running back 15 ADP. There's cheaper backs like Chuba Hubbard, Joe Mixon, and Kenneth Walker. Profile is more likely workhorse options, and offense is not totally expected to suck. My running back 19, don't completely fade Hampton, but he might need high-end efficiency as a rookie in order to outweigh less touches than other top 20 backs, especially in fantasy land, but even for Harris not to cut in. As for Harris, expecting copious standalone value feels iffy. Although the potential to win the goal line role and siphon away 10 to 15 combined carries and targets per week at least makes flex value a possibility. Throw in a legit high-end handcuff upside should the rookie miss any action. And I consider Najee to be a quality later round flex. Flex with benefits. Option in the same mold as Ramondre Stevenson and Jordan Mason. Okay, now question 3 is how high is too high to draft Ladd McConkey this year? Okay. Well, there's a second half booms and there's second half booms. McConkey's 19.2 points per game from week 8 through the playoffs was good for wide receiver 5 behind only Chase, Evans, Higgins, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Okay? Friends don't let friends mistake McConkey as a one-trick pony slot guy. This guy looks every bit as good as Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. last season. Okay, we're talking about great company when analyzing his 2024 rookie's year in yards per route run since 2014. And hell, even removing the rookie qualifier from the equation still leaves McConkey among the league's most efficient options already. Okay, while truly elite heights could be tough in an offense expected to, lean towards the run, Ladd still projects for a solid 126 targets. That is 14th most among all wide receivers ahead of next season. It's probably wishful thinking to expect too much production from anyone in this passing game, but the next best contenders would be Trey Harris. Okay, the team's 2025 second-round pick racked up an absurd 1,030 yards in just 8 games during his final season at Ole Miss. Number 1 in the class in yards per route run versus both man and zone. The primary concern surrounding the rookie is at times gimmicky nature of Lane Kiffin's offense. As well as his decent speed at 4.54 when projecting him to the professional level. Okay, now you got Mike Williams, retired. Quentin Johnson still apparently has a locked-in starter, despite the team's various offseason additions at the position. Now that Mike Williams is gone, I think that's pretty much a lock. Give the former first-rounder credit for his 55 catches and 8 touchdowns. He scored more points per game than Marvin Harrison Jr. We'll give him credit there. Although more than a few of the big plays were of the busted coverage variety, right? His last 2 games of the season was a 13-catch, 186 for 0 touchdowns, followed by goose egg. Demonstrates really just the reality that despite some legit upside, the weekly floor here remains scary low. Okay, so what is Ladd McConkey's fantasy football outlook for 2025? Okay, Ladd is my wide receiver 10. Wide receiver 10 overall, ahead of guys like AJ and Tyreek. Youth, quarterback play, talent, and volume makes him someone I'm perfectly happy to target in the early middle parts of round 2. I haven't gone out of my way to target these other guys due to the likelihood that we see a rotation of sorts in what figures to be a fairly, run-heavy offense. Harris would get my dart out of the trio, or out of the duo with Johnson and Harris. We shouldn't completely sleep on Quentin Johnson again, at his drafting price, considering he's going to be a wide receiver too. Both profile as best ball plays. I mean, it seems doubtful we'll ever feel overly good about slotting any of these guys into redraft starting lineups without an injury to McConkey. Okay. Are we sleeping on Will Dissly at the tight end position, providing some late round goodness? The soon-to-be 29-year-old ex-Seahawk managed to turn in 3 top 10 finishes last season on his way to working as the tight end 25 in a per-game basis. Maybe that was just the sort of even bigger and better things to come. I doubt it. Dissly wasn't even given a full-time role until Hayden Hurst was injured, and the consistency didn't last due to something named Stone Smart earning legit opportunities down the stretch. While Hurst and Smart are indeed off the roster ahead of 2025, the Chargers did sign Tyler Conklin in free agency and used a 5th-round pick on pass-catching tight end Gaddison. Okay, another committee system feels likely inside an offense that only threw 108 total targets to the position last year, in the first place. Okay, so the bottom line is with the tight ends, I'm cool throwing a 5th-round rookie draft at Gaddison, but I pass otherwise. I mean, I'd like to do a shout out. I'd like to do a shout out from the St. Louis Battlehawks, but do the Chargers have one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league? Shout out Taylor Heineke. The well-earned journeyman went 12 for 11 as Washington's starting quarterback during 21 to 23 seasons. Memorably putting up in the great wild card effort by racking up 352 total yards in a loss against Tom Brady and the Bucs. Gave them a run for their money, but still, not really. Heineke has the 12th most career wins at 13 and the 14th best yards per attempt rate among the current 32 backup quarterbacks. While past accomplishments don't necessarily mean any given clipboard holder is better than in the year of 2025, like with the likes of Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, Marcus Mariota. I think those stand out as the most top 5, most proven backup quarterbacks at the moment. But I would rank Heineke up there with the better of backup quarterbacks. So what is our prediction for the Chargers in 2025? Okay, the Chargers enter 2025 with a 9.5 win total. Reminder here that Harbaugh has won 13, 11, 12, and 8, and most recently 11 games during his time as an NFL coach. The 13, 11, 12, and 8 was with San Francisco. Okay, you can probably guess where I'm going here, though. Give me the over for a team that has an extra offseason to spruce up the line of scrimmage, continues to employ one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league, top 10 quarterback in my opinion, Ladd McConkey emerges as this is my bold fantasy prediction call. But Ladd McConkey emerges as the fantasy's highest scoring second-year wide receiver in half PPR scoring. Okay. Next team we're going to talk about is the Denver Broncos. Okay. Year two of Sean Payton and the Denver Broncos produced double-digit wins and a wild card loss at the hands of Josh Allen and the Bills. Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain, led arguably the league's best overall defense, with Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton led a surprisingly solid top 10 scoring offense. The Broncos in 2024, points per game were at 25. They ranked 10th. And in points per game against at 18.3, they were third. So really solid all around, guys. Fast forward to 2025, and most of last season's key contributors returned, while the team also spruced up the running back, tight end, and the secondary rooms throughout the free agency and the draft. PFF ranked the roster as the 9th best in the league, and it's hard to overly disagree with the sentiment. Particularly in some of the offense's young playmakers really live up to their potential, this could be scary. Okay, this brings us to our questions. Just how good was Bo Nix as a rookie? Well, Nix 18.6 fantasy points per game as a rookie were good for the 5th highest mark in the Super Bowl era, behind only Cam Newton, Justin Herbert, Robert Griffin, and, the Rookie of the Year last year, Jaden Daniels. Okay, pretty good company there, especially considering Nix seems to only get better as the season went on. Okay, now, the passing numbers weren't necessarily elite. Nix was the quarterback 16 and quarterback 21 in EPA per dropback, respectively, and completion percentage over expected among 32 qualified signal callers. Okay, still, 25 years old, was a rookie, and it's not like there were many great avenues to go with the football other than Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims. We could throw Marvin Mims in there. Work to do. I think there's work to do. But at the end of the day, one hell of a debut for the 2024 number 12 overall pick. After all, Justin Herbert and Cam Newton are the only rookie quarterbacks to total more combined passing and rushing touchdowns than Nix in NFL history. It's pretty good. So what is our outlook for Bo Nix in 2025? Sorry. Nick's dual threat prowess can't be understated. The only quarterbacks to score more fantasy points from rushing last season were Hurts, Daniels, Allen, Jackson, Murray, and Richardson. Okay, that's a top 7. This is in large part why Nix is receiving the benefit of the doubt in fantasy land in early ADP, which is quarterback 9. Guys like Dak Prescott and Jared Goff just don't offer the same upside on the ground. Ultimately, though, I'm a little lower than other fantasy rankers that I've seen and have Nix as my quarterback 11. Okay, I favor the multi-year production from guys like Justin Fields and Brock Purdy in that range, but we still aren't exactly looking at a world-class group of skill position players here. It's possible Nix runs just a bit less hot in the touchdown department while still looking the part of the team's long-term franchise quarterback. So what are the realistic 1-year expectations for rookie R.J. Harvey. Okay. Broncos selected Harvey with the 60th pick of last year's draft or this year's draft, and to presumably lead a backfield that let Javonte Williams walk in free agency. Okay, he went to UCF, but the UCF product wasn't always believed to be a day 2 caliber prospect. But 4,500 yards and 47 scores during his last 3 seasons at UCF reflect the reality that, well, the 24-year-old is pretty darn good at football. Okay, the running back 5 in the rookie class, in running backs for me, Harvey boasts a quality speed score and gets a nice boost from his draft capital, which is more predictive of rookie year performances than you might think. Okay, but that said, I have Harvey as only running back 9 before the draft. In the rookie, I'm gonna be honest. The Tajay Spears comp isn't a bad thing in my opinion by ESPN, but although the pass down story seems a bit up and down, I don't like it. This takes us to Sean Payton's historical uses at the position. Yes, there have been plenty of good times over the years, with the Saints producing a top 11 running back in points per game during 12 of his 15 seasons in charge. Okay, that was a lot of Reggie Bush, Darren Sproles, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram, okay, Pierre Thomas. A lot of different faces, guys. The last 2 years have been rough. And this is a man who has been happy to use multi-back committees. Okay, consider only the Steelers at 18% and the Bills at 12% left a single running back on the field for at least 60% of their offensive snaps in lower percentage games than the Broncos at 24% last season. Okay, the additional candidates to steal snaps in 2025, J.K. Dobbins. 10th in rush yards over expected per carry last season. Dobbins managed to rack up 1,058 total yards and 9 touchdowns in 13 games in 2024 after suiting up just 9 times during the 21 and 23 seasons. Many have thrown shade at Dobbins for being cooked due to less than amazing long speed on some of his big runs, but just realized he actually is posted a faster top speed than guys like Travis Etienne and Kyron Williams last season. Okay, then you got Jaleel McLaughlin, has averaged a quite good 4.8 yards per carry on 189 rushes over the past 2 seasons. But the pass game ability has been brutal. Overall, McLaughlin's average of 3.7 yards per target ranks dead last among 229 active players with 50-plus targets over the past 2 seasons. Then you have Audric Estime, received a handful of carries per game down the stretch of last season, but only cleared 50 yards on 1 occasion. Sure seems like the decision to sign Dobbins most threatens Estime's potential early down the road. Okay, but the bottom line here, guys, is that Broncos running backs have ranked 1st and 4th in total receptions over the past 2 seasons, despite not having an overly good pass-catching back. Harvey should be that guy, but we're also expecting quite a bit from someone who never caught more than 22 passes in a season at UCF. Ultimately, I struggled to get behind Harvey's running back 20 ADP. Placing such a large bet on the offensive environment and lack of backfield competition feels like a mistake at that sort of price. Okay? Boring veterans like James Conner, David Montgomery are both cheaper. And fellow rookies like Travion Henderson, possibly Quinshawn Junkins and Caleb Johnson also go later, despite nearly unanimously being considered better products just a few short months ago. Okay, I understand the pass catching upside for any running back here. But man, seeing just 49 projected targets doesn't get me too excited for Harvey. Okay, otherwise, I'm mostly out on these other Bronco running backs. Dobbins is a fine enough flex handcuff dart in the later rounds next to guys like Rico Dottle or Roshan Johnson. Although his, 1.5 or 1 year, $2.75 million really hardly guarantees a featured role, right? In the wide receiver department, is Cortland Sutton the only wide receiver here worth pursuing in fantasy land? Okay. Sutton's infamous Thursday night goose egg in week 7 of last year featured also 0 targets. After that, Bo Nix, his number 1 wide receiver, averaged 18.2 points per game. During the rest of the regular season, wide receiver 10, thanks in large part to the absurd league rate 49% air yard share. Excuse me. The 29-year-old veteran has emerged clearly as the team's clear number 1 pass game option during the past 2 years. Although even scoring 18 touchdowns hasn't exactly led to fantasy fireworks. Overall, Sutton worked as just the wide receiver 39 and wide receiver 25 in points per game the last 2 years. Nice value relative to his previous wide receiver 4 price tag. Although not exactly the sort of ceiling perhaps we're chasing at his now wide receiver 29 ADP. Okay, then there's Marvin Mims, who has been used as more of a part-time player during his short 2-year career. In fact, the Broncos' wild card loss to the Bills marked the first time all season that Sean Payton put Mims on the field for at least 50% of the offensive snaps. Glass half empty folks will point to this fact as a sign that the 2023 second rounder isn't, good enough to play starter snaps. But guys like me, the glass half full folks, can simply say that Payton finally caught up to the reality that we're looking at one of the league's more efficient pass catchers here. Okay, Mims has received 24 rushing attempts in 34 career games. And his 27 screen targets last year were the 6th highest mark in the league. Our first team All-Pro returner made plays all over the field in 2024 while proving especially lethal from the slot. Okay, this is a damn good football player capable of winning after the catch and downfield. Even if we haven't seen a ton of route running and other wide receiver stuff. Okay, we know he's good at 2 things. The additional candidates to receive a decent number of snaps next season could be Pat Bryant, right? It's been highly talked about. Okay, earned a Michael Thomas comparison from Sean Payton after the draft. Although it's not exactly rare for the Saints head coach to reference his past stars. Either way, Bryant was selected the 74th overall pick for a reason after posting 16 yards short of 1,000 on just 54 catches and 10 touchdowns. Okay, final season at Illinois. I'm just not expecting too many year 1 fireworks from the wide receiver 11 in the rookie rankings. Okay. Now we have Devon Vale. Okay. Caught 41 of 55 targets for 475 yards and a trio of scores as the 7th-round rookie, although his role actually decreased down the stretch in favor of Mims and Troy Franklin. It's tough to see Vele commanding a full-time role with the potential overlap in skill sets between him and Bryant. Now to get to the juicy part, Troy Franklin, the ex-Oregon baller with Bo Nix. He received a team-high 12 targets on passes thrown 30 yards plus downfield and caught exactly one. But hey, it was a good one. That said, Franklin caught more than 2 passes in a single game just once and was largely pigeonholed into wide receiver for field stretcher role. Something that doesn't seem overly on the verge of changing in 2025. I think he's just a field stretcher. I think it just is, if he's open, he's open. But you're not going to see enough targets to do any damage in fantasy land. Okay, the bottom line here is we might be looking at a rare situation that features 5 different wide receivers regularly rotating. Okay, Sutton is locked in as the obvious wide receiver one, although the newfound presence of this team's viable pass-catching running back and now tight end could shrink his target load. Given the fact that Peyton couldn't coax a top 24 finish out of Sutton in 2024 with essentially 0 target competition then, I haven't been lining up in early drafts to buy him at his most expensive price in years. Okay, I've also generally not gone too hard in the paint for these other pass catchers due to similar best-case upside concerns. Bryant would be the late-round dart I'd recommend throwing, but guys like Romeo Dubes, and Cedric Tillman basically cost the same and are good and project to see a quite bit more volume. Okay, in the tight end department, what is Evan Ingram's ceiling as Sean Payton's latest joker tight end, as Sean Payton took it or said it? Okay, the former first-round pick didn't exactly live up to the hype during his first 5 seasons with the Giants, but underwent a bit of a rebirth during his 3 years in Jacksonville. Okay, Evan Ingram among 40 tight ends with 100-plus targets from the last 3 years. He is 2nd in receptions, 8th in targets per route, and 5th in receiving yards. Okay, overall, Ingram averaged a robust 11.6 points per game, the 8th highest mark at the position. It's rare to see a 6'3" guy, at the position with the ability to move in the space like you do with Evan Ingram. Obviously, the Broncos haven't managed to field a player up to Peyton's standards at tight end over the past 2 seasons. Okay, Denver tight ends have ranked dead last in targets by a whopping 37. Okay, 37 pass game opportunities since 2023. His track record at the position over the years really haven't been too hot either, other than the obvious Jimmy Graham booms, right? Okay, still, Evan Ingram spent more total snaps in the slot or out wide than he did in line as a tight end last year. Okay, indicating that a role as the starting tight end or de facto big slot is firmly on the table. Okay, the reality that the reality that the only proven commodities in the Broncos wide receiver room are Sutton and to a lesser extent Mims adds credence to the idea that Ingram should have a featured role from day one. Something reflected, when we have Sutton at 117 targets and Ingram at 108 projection. Okay, but the bottom line here is Ingram is one of my top 3 most drafted tight ends in this offseason. Thanks to his previous borderline tight end 1 price and potential to clear triple-digit targets in a reigning top 10 scoring offense. Okay, the Broncos have 23 million reasons to feature the soon-to-be 31-year-old tight end as much as possible. He's my tight end 9 and someone I'd take ahead of guys like the recently traded Jonnu Smith and the first-round rookie tight ends. Okay, what teams have invested the most in their offensive line in recent years? Okay, I thought this was interesting, so I wrote this down. The Broncos are up there, right? Overall, they have ranked 13th, 12th, and 5th in total dollars spent on the offensive line since 2025. Their average rank of 10 places from them in 6th place, only behind the Lions, Falcons, Colts, Panthers, and Chiefs. Can you guess who comes in dead last? Well, that's the Seahawks. I just had to throw that out there. But, yeah, so they're up there with the most money invested in their O-line. I mean, they know it works, right? So what's our prediction for the Chargers? For the Broncos. For the Broncos in the 2025. Okay, the Broncos' ability to win 10 games last year, despite only going 1-6 in one-score contest, is quite impressive. Throw in the potential for Nix to make a year 2 leap and an offense that made an effort to add more quality playmakers. I'm taking the over on a 9.5 wins despite the loaded nature of the AFC West. As for my bold fantasy prediction, Evan Ingram leads all Bronco pass catchers in points per game on his way to a top 6 finish at the position. All right, guys, last team we're going to get into is the Las Vegas Raiders. Appreciate everybody sticking around. We are going to be done here in about 20 minutes and finally be done with the divisions. So, again, the Las Vegas Raiders vibes were relatively high in Las Vegas following a 2023 season that featured Antonio Pierce, led the team to a 5-4 finish while establishing the Raider way. Okay, a 2-2 start in 2024 included a lethal survivor pool. The win in Baltimore really set the tone for their survival last season, but creating more general optimism around a franchise. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. Creating more general optimism around a franchise that hasn't won a playoff game since 2003. I mean, that's a yikes, right? And then Pierce and company dropped their next 10 games while looking at a lot more like one of the worst teams in the NFL. Okay, let's talk about it. Las Vegas Raiders in 2024, points per game in offense, only at 18.2, were ranked 29th. In the points per game against, 25.5 at ranked 25th. The run defense was atrocious. The secondary wasn't much better. Fast forward to the present day, and suddenly Pete Carroll is now leading the Raiders offense, now relying on Geno Smith, 6th overall pick, Ashton Genty, throw in incompetent, blue chippers like Brock Bowers, Max Crosby. And at least this year's version of the Raiders figures to have some sort of pulse on both sides of the ball. Okay, so that brings us to our questions. Does the mainstream media need to give Geno Smith more respect? Okay, on the one hand, Smith needs to be cut down on some of his mistakes in 2025. Smith's 18 turnover-worthy plays were tied with Jameis Winston for the 6th highest mark in the league. Only Baker Mayfield at 16 or Kirk Cousins also at 16. threw more interceptions than Geno Smith at 15. Okay, nobody threw more red zone interceptions than Geno Smith. Only Caleb Williams and C.J. Stroud lost more yardage from sacks than Geno Smith. On the other hand, okay, there's always two sides to the story. PFF's reigning 31st ranked offensive line in Seattle didn't do Geno any favors. And turnover-worthy plays, tend to happen more often when you have a gunslinger like him under center. Okay, the amount of dead-in-the-water plays that Smith actually managed to save over the last few seasons is actually truly wild. Okay, the latter point here is where the idea that Smith is vastly underrated coming into play. The man has a way of completing throws that any quarterback wouldn't even dream of trying. This has accordingly led to a consistent high-end excellence when it comes to completion percentage over expected. Okay, Geno Smith's completion percentage over expected for the last 3 years. In 2022, he was number one at 5.6%. 2023 fell off at number 11 for 2.4. But then last year rose back up to number 4 at 5.6 again. Okay, now he's turning 35 in October, but Smith isn't a spring, he's not a spring of chicken nut these days. But that hasn't stopped him from averaging a solid 16.2 rushing yards per game over the past 3 seasons. Now, it's more than guys like Justin Herbert, Baker Mayfield during that span. It remains to be seen exactly how much the new OC and Chip Kelly will lean on the Raiders' passing attack. His offense is in Philadelphia. Sorry, I almost choked. And San Francisco ranked 27th, 5th, 6th, 29th, respectively. So when he's not, never mind, I'm not going to get into it. But the ex-Seahawk, Geno Smith, certainly constitutes a quantifiable upgrade over the sad excuses for quarterback rooms that the Raiders have deployed since parting ways with Derek Carr, right? Bottom line here is I'd bet that even Geno Smith's biggest truthers aren't exactly expecting him to put forth top 10 numbers in a fantasy land this season. But the current quarterback 26 price tag pits him after, passers like Stafford to Penix. I do prefer targeting Smith over this group of passers and am highest on him among all fantasy rankers that I've seen. He's my quarterback 21. Although he's still really on a late round target in Superflex, but I think that when you have to take multiple quarterbacks, Geno Smith is a solid pick. Okay, so how high is too high to draft Ashton Genty in fantasy land? All of the 2025 NFL's draft 6th overall pick of this last season. He did just come shy of 28 yards of breaking Barry Sanders' single game football record. The man did he did so in style. From 2015 to 2023, the single best single season marked in missed tackles forced on rush attempts was held by Bijan Robinson at Texas with 104. Okay, in the past 8 years, from 15 to 2023, and then I'm just saying in that span, Bijan Robinson with 104 missed tackles forced on a rush. Okay. In 2024, Genty forced 152 missed tackles. That's a lot. That's a lot of tackles, guys. Okay, this produced quite the analytical, prospect profile. Genty now finds himself Obviously, is the number one running back and possibly number one rookie among all fantasy rankings. Okay. I'm on the hype train. I mean, it's as simple as that. I'm on the hype train. It certainly seems like that the Raiders give Genty every opportunity to work as their featured running back. Okay, this has usually been the case when a team has spent top 10 draft capital at the position. Okay, so with these guys that have been drafted in the top 10, okay, we had to talk about guys like Bijan, who saw 272 touches, Saquon, 352, he finished second. Leonard Fournette finished running back 7. Ezekiel Elliott, 3. Todd Gurley, 5. Trent Richardson, 5. Okay, perhaps the real game-changing feature here will be Genty's receiving ability. While the 2024 numbers dropped off, that seemed like a consensus decision, from Boise State to try to chase Sanders' record. Reminder here that Genty averaged north of 3 yards per route run in 2023, something only Christian McCaffrey and Jahmyr Gibbs have also managed to do over the last decade. Okay, so what's our outlook here for Ashton Genty? Genty is someone I've ranked as high as running back 3 and as low as running back 7 this offseason. My primary issue is the expectation for the Raiders to be the worst scoring offense among the early round running backs. Historically, we've seen elite running back fantasy production to be strongly correlated to a team's overall scoring rank. It's tough to only overly bicker with any running back poised to see north of 300 touches with good health. Just realize that guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, CMC, Devon Achane, and Derrick Henry are also pretty good at football themselves, making it tough for me to rationalize and always prioritizing Genty ahead of them on a pure talent bet. Okay, as for the other guys here, pass. Mostert is probably most worthy of the late round dart, but even then, his $1.6 million deal doesn't jump targets and snaps off my page. Now, does Jacoby Myers in the wide receiver department, does Jacoby Myers have top 24 upside? I would say so. After all, he's done exactly that after his first 2 seasons with the Raiders. Jacoby Myers in points per game the last 2 years has been wide receiver 24 and wide receiver 21. Myers boasted a preseason ADP as just the wide receiver 53 in both the last 2 years. Now he's up to the wide receiver 40 in early drafts despite the absence of Devontae Adams. Okay, yes, Brock Bowers could very well again more or less work as the offense's top pass game option. But also, yes, this is a barren wide receiver room outside of Myers. Okay, I have him earning 120 targets this season. That's the 18th most by any player at the position. Hitting 29 in November, Myers is still in his prime and someone who would probably be getting more hype if he hadn't been forced to spend the bulk of his career on usually the bad Patriots and Raider teams. Okay, nobody has had more receptions at 87 without a charged drop by PFF last season. It's a damn good football player. Okay, as for the rest of this wide receiver room, Jack Beck, the Raiders' second-round pick, broke out during his final season at TCU after being stuck in an ever-loaded wide receiver or LSU wide receiver room during his first 2 years of his collegiate career. Still, Beck managed to lead the 2021 LSU Tigers, in receptions despite sharing the field with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. Okay, he should be the front runner for wide receiver 2 duties here. Although, Early practice reports have him working mostly with the second-team offense. Either way, we're looking at the best-case third pass game option inside a likely run-first offense. Okay? I don't love his wide receiver 8 ranking in rookies either. Trey Tucker, the pint-sized speedster, was the offense's third most targeted pass catcher last season, but only managed to return 47 catches, 500 yards, and 3 touchdowns. His vertical juice seems to overlap more so with Deontay Thornton. It'd be surprising to see the Raiders lean on the rising third-year talent who was drafted and utilized under a completely different coaching staff and front office. As for Dante Thornton, the fourth-round pick offers an enticing blend of size at 6'5" and speed with 4.3. Inside a wide receiver room lacking role in both categories. His big play potential is reflected by his college football's best 25.4 yards per reception in 2024. Okay, although the man did manage to catch only 65 total passes during his first 4 seasons, at Oregon and Tennessee. Bottom line here is I am the highest. Excuse me. I'm the highest of any fantasy ranker that I've seen on Myers at wide receiver 34. He's a very good real-life wide receiver with proven wide receiver 2 upside in fantasy land and is available right now at wide receiver 4 price tag. That's a combo worth investing in. Otherwise, similar to the running back, I haven't gone out of my way for anyone due to the potential that could flow first and foremost through its top tight end, wide receiver, and hell, maybe even a running back. Beck would be a dart I'd throw, although even then we're talking about someone, that every ranker that I've seen has him wide receiver 60 or worse. Even at that price tag, I found myself targeting veterans like Christian Kirk and Cedric Tillman. Should you sign up to take Brock Bowers in round 2 of fantasy drafts? Okay. All the man did was pull off one of the single best rookie seasons ever at the position. Brock Bowers' 112 receptions shattered Sam Laporta's previous record at 86, and his receiving of 1,194 yards finally took down Mike Dick's 63-year-old record at 1,076. Okay, no tight end wound up with more total points than Bowers, so now he joins Laporta, Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews as the only tight ends that can say that since 2015. The fact Bowers achieved all this with near league worst quarterback play is even more impressive. 22-year-old talent might just be scratching the surface, though, on what he's capable of. And he's accordingly been treated as the consensus tight end 1 across the fantasy football industry. Now, for the key question. Is Bowers' current price tag as the ADP tight end 1 a bit too steep? I have 3 primary concerns. Okay. Maybe Geno Smith and Chip Kelly provide upgrades here, but it's a given that this leads to necessary, ridiculous volume. Okay, Bowers was being force-fed the ball down the stretch last year. The fourth quarter garbage times numbers were ridiculous. And Kelly's lead tight end averaged 77 targets per season during his first 4 years in the pros. Bowers ran pretty hot last year with Michael Mayer not playing between weeks 4 through 10. The Raiders didn't let his return to action impact Bowers' every down roll last year, but just realized that the 23-year-old former 35th overall pick is steeper backup competition than most. The top 18 price tag here is much steeper than Trey McBride or George Kittle, who both wound up outscoring Bowers on a per-game basis last season. Okay, so what is our fantasy football outlook for Brock Bowers? I won't argue with you, with anyone at that matter, who wants to crown Bowers as the tight end one in the fantasy ahead of next season. But personally, I believe the position to be a big three tier. Okay, and accordingly, still haven't gone out of my way to take the most expensive option. Taking a tight end this early hasn't usually worked out for players not named Travis Kelce. Prior, not now, prior. My bigger issue with Bowers' ADP is the overall pick is as opposed to his positional standing. Okay, so what is our prediction and last prediction for the Raiders in 2025? The new look Raiders enter 2025 with a manageable 6.5 win total. And I'm keen to buy the over on it, thanks to more of a competitive overall team, led by longtime winner Pete Carroll. The upgrade under center can't be overstated. And there are enough high-end talents littered across the roster to make me believe that this squad can at least flirt with a 500 record. Okay? As for my fantasy bold prediction, Brock Bowers will not be the tight end number one, and Jacoby Myers will parlay another triple-digit target workload from his best quarterback since Tom Brady, and notching his third top 24 fantasy finish in as many years. Guys, it's been appreciated, all the support here in the last couple weeks. But our divisions are done. If you have missed a division, if you would like something else covered, please go check out the Marshall Experience and the Sports Lounge Media on YouTube, and you will catch up with all of those videos. We also take comments during the videos, and I go through the comments, guys. I'll go through them post video, and then if there's any questions or anything like that, I will address them in the next video. Okay? We're not sure about Thursday's topic just yet, but if you want to find out, tune in Thursday at 8 o'clock Central. We will be back on the Marshall Experience to bring you the best experience that you can have. Thank you, guys, and have a good night.